Hi, I'm Crystal from TradeGecko. Thanks for joining our webinar on batching and expiry date tracking and how these functions can help your business. I'll hand over now to Frankie, Product Manager at TradeGecko.
Thanks, Crystal. Hi, everyone. In this webinar, I'm going to cover what traceability is and why is it important in today's globalized world. We'll share a story about Anna, about her journey to building her business and the struggle as she figures out how to keep track of her perishable goods. We'll discuss a few common pain points that customers run into and talk about specific examples through case studies. And finally, we'll share best practices on how to overcome such pain points. But I'd like to start off by talking about ice cream. So I came across this local ice cream brand in Singapore that carries delicious flavors like caramel chocolate chip and island coconut. What's interesting is that though the production is locally made here in Singapore, the ice cream is actually from all over the world. That's because the raspberries may come from Russia, chocolate from Germany, strawberries from the States. We live in such a globalized world that someone living in Iceland can enjoy being able to buy lettuce all year round. Transportation becoming a commodity, agricultural and food science advancements, and increasing numbers of trade agreements are just some of the factors accelerating the globalizing food industry. While benefits of such changes are clear, there are concerns that naturally arise around food security, the environment, and sustainability. Some of the worst manifestations of such a connected world are food recalls. And here we have a food recall for ice cream in November of 2016, which was actually the 5th recall of an ice cream brand that year. Second, we have a more widespread recall affecting hundreds of products across multiple brands of frozen foods. And lastly here, we have a recall for flour, a basic ingredient used both in households and commercial operations. And so in the United States alone, there are over 2,500 recalls a year. Why this is important is essentially that a hyper-connected world requires hyper-traceability. Traceability is the ability to verify the history, location, or application of any item by means of a document or recorded identification. It means having a figurative paper trail for how a product moves across its journey from point A to Z. And I'd like to switch gears actually to share a quick story about Anna. And so Anna, who is a formerly trained speech therapist, worked in geriatric hospitals treating patients with difficulty swallowing. She would work with them for hours trying to rehabilitate their ability to converse following an injury or trauma. Here's a quote from Anna. Part of my job involved telling patients that they could no longer eat and drink, thus needing a feeding tube, or that they had to eat unappetizing food, soft food, for the rest of their lives. She goes on to say, the alternative would be to risk having food enter their lungs, potentially causing pneumonia. So after seeing thousands of patients who lost all enjoyment during meal times and whose quality of life suffered greatly because of their inability to eat or drink normal food, she started asking if there was more she could offer. And so she began to search for creative solutions around the world and eventually found one in Japan. During her search, she also ended up going back to school to study a master's in public health in order to understand how to systematically solve the problem. And so what resulted from her efforts was a new business, which is centered around the distribution of nutritious, delicious, and easy to eat foods that now serves hundreds of residents in dozens of nursing homes throughout Singapore. She also works with a nutritionist to deliver meal plans that are beneficial to the residents. In Anna's case, knowing what is being sent where and making sure that every service she is providing is of the best quality product is not just a business principle, it's why she built the business in the first place and is exemplary of the positive change she wants to bring into people's lives. Making sure that all goods delivered to homes are well within their shelf life, that the right food solutions get to the right patients, and maintaining a positive relationship with all the people and businesses she interacts with is not only core to her business success, but also to her personal success. And so in talking to dozens of customers like Anna and hearing their stories, there were three clear struggles that kept recurring as a pattern. We heard loud and clear that there is a large amount of uncertainty involved with selling to your first set of large customers, that it's hard to be proactive in maintaining positive relationships with them as you grow, and that it hurts, it's painful to have discounted stock, or even worse, having to throw out stock. And I'd like to dig deeper into each of these three pain points and suggest a few best practices on how to overcome them. So our first story is Erika. I'd like you to meet Erika, who owns a organic soap company in North Carolina. She started off by selling her products to local retailers in and around her hometown, where she knew each store owner by name. So whenever there was a problem with any batch of produced goods, they would simply call her and sort things out in a very personal way, typically by SMS or WhatsApp. As her business grew, the complexity grew around managing orders, shipments, product quality as well. Her breaking point was when she received her first order from Whole Foods, which is a large national grocery chain in the States. Being a large-scale operation, their requirements for traceability were quite extensive, and Erika felt unprepared and overwhelmed by the task. So what we learned from Erika is that from her perspective, she needs to hire TradeGecko because she just received a huge order from Whole Foods and she's overwhelmed and unprepared by their requirements. So larger customers have strict traceability requirements, and a batch tracking system needs to be able to pull out the appropriate information quickly and accurately every time. We also learned that traceability is relatively easy when you sell to a few small retailers, but it becomes quite complex as you acquire more and larger customers. Your system needs to scale and solve more problems as you grow, not less. And thirdly, we learned that being proactive means having meaningful information and acting quickly on it so that you can build trust with your customer. Trust is crucial to you as you deal with small customers, but becomes even more important as you grow to larger customers. Our second story comes from Tony. Tony heads a medical devices distributor out of South Africa. Tony had a long and an illustrious career in oil and gas before starting his company distributing Bluetooth-enabled electronic devices that were used to track diabetes. And they were used in order to get patients and hospitals to monitor and exchange information around their chronic diseases. His company needs to track defects and device failures, and also deals with consumables for blood tests, managing everything on Excel. Tony expressed the fear of recalls affecting people's lives, as devices are crucial and critical to their well-being. So what we learned in talking with Tony and from his perspective is that he needs to hire TradeGecko, because if one of my batches is defective, I need to make sure that the relationship I have is not affected by it, because relationships with my customers are ridiculously important. And so what we learned was that some industries require traceabilities, but all companies need to have the information ready if or when they're being audited. We also learned that managing a recall can take more than 100 person-hours to complete. Having the right information on hand is priceless in times of crises. And thirdly, recalls are not an if, but a when situation. We've heard multiple times that recalls are a ticking time bomb for any business that deals with anything perishable. Our third story has to do with Jonathan. So Jonathan is the founder of an artisanal ice cream manufacturer in North Carolina. After receiving a law degree and serving a stint as a prosecutor, Jonathan pivoted his life into a career making something people love. He went to a renowned culinary school, and from there he launched his brand alongside with his brother. Along the way, he also met a few like-minded brand owners and grew his company into a major distributor of artisanal desserts in the state. What Jonathan described as a major pain point is having to discount or even throw out certain goods with short shelf lives. What can be more sad than throwing out ice cream? What we learned from Jonathan's story and from his perspective is that I need to hire TradeGecko because I am discounting expiring stock too often, and I need to quickly find out what stock to get rid of more easily. So from our research, over 3/4 of the customers we had spoken to had to discount expiring stock on a regular basis, and discounts varying from 10 to 50% at times. We also found out that managing aging stock becomes quite a pain point as your business complexity grows, as the types of products grows. More products just equals more complexity when it comes to having to manage perishable goods. And in the industry of food and beverage, we also have to deal with spoilage. And so throwing away goods is a very painful process, especially if you sell ice cream. And so by circling back into traceability, we discovered that customers dealing with perishable goods have so many types of transactions, documents, opportunities for mistakes that can be made throughout a product's journey. Being able to not only track, but also reconcile changes and mistakes becomes crucial when your business depends on the right stock being sent to the right customer. And a second takeaway is maintaining positive relationships. And so we have a customer in Rwanda, actually, who sells pastries and desserts, who regularly has to make sure that the orders fulfilled are very consistent. And so what he has to do is make sure each customer only receives one batch so that the size of, in this case, croissants is consistent throughout the entire order. And so having a system in place to quickly trace and identify who supplied the good, who bought it, and where it is, and how many, so that you can quickly communicate news to your customers and suppliers is very important when you're trying to maintain that positive relationship with them. And so TradeGecko helps you maintain a familiar brand throughout all the touch points that you have with that customer, from invoices, packing slips on our platforms, our B2B platform. It's important to have that consistent and familiar brand with that customer to maintain that relationship with them. And our third takeaway is that in dealing with perishable goods, it's often the case that you need to discount or in some cases have to throw away goods. And so the best practice here is to use FIFO, first in, first out logic, so that you make sure that your oldest stock gets sent out first. Staying in control of your expiring stock is also a communication problem. And so having all the information easily at hand and communicating that with your salespeople makes sure that you push out your oldest stock first. And also in case something does happen, making sure that you can quickly find out who supplied the good to you, and making sure that suppliers are sending you quality goods is very important. So keep tabs on suppliers by maintaining a quick view of all the goods they've sent to you over time, and what is the rate of return for those products is very important as well. And so in talking to our customers, dozens of customers and non-customers alike, we've been able to learn about fantastic stories and journeys that brand owners and distributors have gone through. And at TradeGecko, we really believe in enabling every commerce entrepreneur to build the business of their dreams. And so whether you're an existing customer or someone who's considering to join us, or just here to learn more about product traceability, we really do wish you the best of success.
Okay, thanks, Frankie. That's it for today. To find out more about TradeGecko and our batch and expiry tracking, start a free trial at tradegecko.com.